This is Grace Notes. I'm Alan Button, and pleased to have as my guest today in the studio, Billy Thomas. Billy, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Alan.
Billy is the managing director of the Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner and Smith office in Raleigh, but we're not really here to talk about that, are we, Billy?
No, I'd rather talk about other things.
Very good. Well, Billy is a resident of Pinehurst, North Carolina, and made his way there from Cary. And Billy, I think I will stop there because you know your story a lot better than I do. Mm-hmm. Tell us how you ended up in Cary and eventually Pinehurst.
Sure. My wife and I came from a small town in Kentucky called Hopkinsville, Kentucky, near Fort Campbell military base. So not a lot of opportunity in the town. So when we married, we decided to move to an area that had more growth and more opportunities. And we selected Cary somewhat randomly. We knew there was several good schools there and seemed to be good growth. So we moved early in 1992.
Your wife's name, by the way, is
My wife's name is Lisa.
Lisa, okay.
Yes. So we moved in 1992, and she worked as a legal secretary, and I worked as an assistant golf pro for a little while, and eventually then got hired at Merrill Lynch about 2 years later, and we began raising a family up in Cary.
Uh-huh. This was in it would have been around 1993 then, I'm hearing?
Yeah, so I went to work in 1994 with Merrill Lynch, and our first child, our son Will, was born in September of 94. And then 4.5 years later, we welcomed twin girls, Paige and Riley. So our life dramatically changed then as we were now having to raise children.
Uh-huh. And your kids were in the public schools in Cary?
They were. My mother was a high school public teacher in California, which is where I actually spent the first 15 years of my life. And so I kind of felt like if the public school was good enough for my mother to work in and to send us, then it was good enough for our children.
Good. Well, how'd you end up in Pinehurst?
Okay, well, that story...
there's more to that story than just a moving van, I gather.
That's correct. It's I'll try to keep it somewhat brief.
And I gather, too, by the way, you mentioned golf, which I didn't realize you were into. When people hear Pinehurst, they often think of golf, but golf really wasn't part of the motivation for the move either, was it?
No, it was the part of the motivation that we bought a home in Pinehurst in 2004. And I worked as an assistant golf pro, and but we just loved the small town. It reminded us of a small town that we both came from. So it was good to get away from the hustle bustle of a larger city that Cary was becoming. I raising my kids, I thought I was doing a great job as a father. I had everything under control. They were all doing well. My son he graduated and played college golf. Both my daughters were doing well in school, and I thought, this parenting thing's not so difficult. And then the moment I started getting a little prideful, I think things started to get a little chaotic. It started off with one of my daughter's best friend dying in a car accident on the way to school when she was 15. And then 4 months later, her twin sister had a boyfriend who committed suicide. And the school blamed my daughter, saying it was her fault because she didn't answer his phone call, which was a cry for help around 2 a.m., right before he took his life. So my two daughters took different paths on how they dealt with the grief. The one that lost her best friend decided that she wanted to focus on school and make her life purposeful as kind of a tribute to her lost friend. The other daughter decided that she wanted to live her life the way her boyfriend did and fell into drug addiction, which ultimately was what resulted in him taking his life. He felt like there was no other way out. So she thought she would just basically, go the same way he did and started getting into heavy drug use, which was I was unaware of. So my daughter that wanted to kind of make her life more purposeful and focus on education said she actually wanted to move to Pinehurst and go to O'Neill. So
a private school in Pinehurst.
Private school in Pinehurst is more college preparatory. so that she would be better equipped to go to college. And so we split the family. She moved to Pinehurst, and I stayed behind with my other daughter. And the second day of school, I received a phone call from the principal of the office, and they asked me to come to the office because they had caught my daughter skipping school, and she had admitted that she was doing drugs. And so I brought her home, and she was pretty desperate, crying for help at that time, needing help from her addiction. That moment she had 27 milligrams of Xanax, which I think the normal prescription is like half a milligram. So she was actually lucky she didn't die of an overdose then.
Well, that was a real eye-opener, change in life for you, change in perspective.
Definitely was. And so we knew we needed to find her help, and had about 5 days to do it because the school said she can return after 5 days. And so she was expecting to be able to go right back to school, but we knew we couldn't allow that. I was living alone with her and couldn't really monitor. So we got her into a 15-month program down in Alabama. It was a program through Teen Challenge, so she had to be in school, and so she finished her high school there, but it was also a treatment program for her addiction. So I found myself alone and said, okay, I'm going to Pinehurst with the rest of my family, and so kind of packed up, pretty much left everything the way it was and moved.
Tell you what, Billy, we want to hear the rest of what happened and what Pinehurst and the ministry you've gotten involved with there is all about. But before we do that, I think this first song that you've selected ties in pretty well with what you've already described. Tell us about it. Where Streets Have No Name by U2.
Yeah, so living in Cary, I lived in a community called Prestonwood. It was a country club community. And when we first moved there, it was in bankruptcy. And so a lot of people that came there because they couldn't afford a nice country club moved there. And then Jim Goodnight bought it, who was the richest man in North Carolina. And it became the prestigious place. Everybody wanted to live in Prestonwood because they felt like they had been successful and arrived, if that's what they can accomplish in life. And for me, I thought it was kind of sad to think that, our measurement of success is where we live and what community we live in. And I think moving to Pinehurst and getting involved in the community I work with now, I just dreamed of a place and thinking of when I go to heaven, there are no names on the streets. There's no neighborhoods that signify what level of success people have achieved, but we're all the same. We're all perfectly and uniquely created with special gifts and skills. And it's about the quality and content of our heart, not what we've achieved or where we live.
I know from having talked with you before we came into the studio that you're a man who knows his lyrics. Are there any particular lyrics of this song that stand out for you besides Where the Streets Have No Name?
Not so much, but just knowing why he wrote it. He wrote it about Ireland, where...
You're talking about
Bono with U2.
Uh-huh.
Yes. It was about him growing up in Ireland and where whether you were Catholic or Protestant or rich or poor, everybody knew exactly what your group was based on what your street was that you lived on. So kind of more his reasoning by it. But I think just the main chorus line of Where the Streets Have No Name is just what resonates so much.
Envisioning a special place where the street names make no difference.
Exactly.
Let's hear it. Where Streets Have No Name by U2. That was Where Streets Have No Name by U2. If you're just joining us, our guest today is Billy Thomas. Billy is managing director of the Merrill Lynch office in Raleigh, a certified financial analyst, but talking about his family and a ministry that he co-founded. The ministry named Pilgrim's Progress. Let me have you take it from there, Billy. Pick back up with what you were telling us about your move to Pinehurst and your daughter, and eventually leading to the founding of Pilgrim's Progress.
Sure. So yes, when we moved in 2015, my wife and I think both were seeking, with the trials that we went through, more transformational type of relationships rather than transactional. So I knew tons of people up in Cary because I'd lived there so long, and but none of them had any depth to them. They were very shallow, and so I intentionally sought deep relationships when I moved to Pinehurst. I got involved with Bible study and retreat through the church, and that's where I met the co-founder with me of Pilgrim's Progress. Also got connected with an organization called F3, where we're a workout group, and their whole mission and vision is to reinvigorate male community leadership, virtuous leaders in the community.
F3 stands for what?
It stands for fitness, fellowship, and faith.
Uh-huh.
And so, that was something that I was very intentional about because I didn't have anybody to lean on. And I really needed people that can be supportive network for me when I got there. So one of the things we also wanted to do is, now that we lived at our house, we used to use our second home to host organizations that were just on our heart. We would host Young Life, Campus Crusades, church organizations, college golf fellowships that would come, and we just let them stay at our home, and we would serve and host them there. But now that was our primary home, we needed another place to allow us to do this. So we ended up in late 2015 buying a large home in the community that was probably one of the most recognized homes in the community. And it was a little intimidating, but we're like, okay, now what are we going to do with this? And we did start using that to host some of these organizations, but then throughout this time, I became a man, I would say, of faith. I became a Christian because all of the things I saw going on in my life, I knew that it would take more faith to think that happened just by chance than that somebody was somewhat involved in orchestrating it. Mm-hmm. So it just could not be by coincidence. And so there were so many steps that I would just say are totally supernatural, that I could sit here all day and describe how it led us to opening a safe house started out with men struggling with drug and alcohol addiction. So we opened our doors June 1st, 2017, so we just celebrated 5 years. And they reside in a cottage behind this main house that we also use for hosting organizations. And there's 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, and we host up to six men in there.
So your whole home arrangement has truly become a ministry.
Yes, absolutely. People laugh because every weekend we've got 10, 15, 20 people at our house between the 2 different houses. And it's somewhat chaotic, but my wife and I both love it.
What a great thing. And I understand that over these last almost 5 years now, there have been some 2,000 people, perhaps, that have been...
we don't know the exact number, but I would estimate about 2,000 men that have come through the house.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, let's maybe, I was going to say backtrack, but maybe that's not the right word. You've got another song that says something about your motivation for getting Pilgrim's Progress started, mm-hmm. But also the song says something about those that you seek to reach. Is that fair?
Sure.
Let's tell us about that song. Another song not typically on our playlist, but a group that is represented on our playlist, Point of No Return by Kansas. Why that song?
So I'd say the lyrics of that song just resonated so much of how it felt as a family with a child in addiction. And so if I backtrack a little bit, when my daughter returned from the 15 months in treatment, she was worse than when she left. And she intentionally sought to find the worst people that she could find. And probably within a month after her return, she ran away from home, and we found her back up in Cary with a young man that we knew through the high school that had dropped out of school, and he was the worst we knew, worst drug addict, felony charges. But one day we found ourselves with him in our house, and that was how we detoxed him in our house. And then she found another young man and brought him back. But my daughter continued to basically go down that path. And the song kind of has me thinking about that she chose to go out to sea, and we didn't go with her. And so her brother and her sister were on the shore, her mother and father were on the shore, and all we can do is cry out to her, we need you, we love you. Brother's just echoing the words of, how are you going to know when you get to the point of no return? And so some of the lyrics of the song say the demons guard the gates, where basically nobody lives beyond that. It's just the graveyard for sailors that went too far. And so that's the way it felt, is that she was on a boat where the seas get so dark, and it gets so dark that you can't see the light at all. You can't find your way back. And most people never come back. Most people wind up in the graveyard. And it's just a helpless feeling, because I can't swim out there after her. I can't jump on the boat with her and steer it back. I can just kind of cry out to her and say, when you see that point where it's just so dark and it's going to lead to your death, please remember us and come back. And I think one of the lyrics in there too say, I found a message that was in a bottle that came from the person at sea. And when she was in treatment, that was the only way we can communicate for a while, is via letters. And so the letters going back and forth of just, that's the only hope that you held on to, that she was still alive, because I'd get a letter in the mail.
Today I found a message floating in the sea from you to me. You wrote that when you could see it, you cried with fear. The point was near. Was it you that said, how long, how long, how long to the point of no return? You've painted a great picture, Billy, of what this song is all about. Let's hear it. Point of No Return by Kansas.
I heard the men saying something. The captains tell they pay you well, and they say they need sailing. How long? How long?
Billy, my inclination with a lot of our guests is to ask them why they do what they do. But I think you've given us a pretty good picture of why you do what you do in terms of Pilgrim's Progress, given your background with your daughter and the other challenges that you've wrestled with. Thank you for sharing those things.
Anytime. It's my pleasure.
Tell us a little bit more, while in our remaining time, how exactly Pilgrim's Progress works.
So, starting Pilgrim's Progress, I co-founded it with a young man named Zach Kundinger. Met him through church, and he was struggling with addiction. And so when I really had the struggles with my daughter, I reached out to him just as somebody that knew what she was dealing with. So we started it because there was a void in the community, that the treatment centers that were affordable had waiting lists. If you had $10,000 a month or $20,000 a month, you can get treatment. But if you had no money, most the good programs were full, and there would be a month and a half long waiting list. So at the hospitals where they have to be detoxed, they can only keep them 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, and then they had to release them. So even though the treatment centers would do their screening and vetting and approve them to come, they would tell them that they had to stay sober for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks. So what we did is recognize the need in the community to basically provide housing and shelter for these men until a bed was open.
For that in-between period.
Correct. So we open the house and we house up to 6 men, and we partner with several different treatment programs in the area, one in Carthage, one in Raleigh, one in Rockingham. And we lay the groundwork for them, just getting them ready for treatment. But the way we kind of envision it is, we think of God sends us an acorn, and we don't get to choose who comes to us, but all we can do is just water it and plant it in fertile soil and pray that it takes root. And if it does take root and shows signs that it's going to survive, then we will transfer it to treatment where they can learn more, gain the skills necessary, the tools necessary to stay sober. So once they complete that, then they go typically to halfway houses. And they have sponsors where they continue to work with a sponsor purely to help them with their recovery. So we work a lot with Alcoholics Anonymous, but also maintain a faith element. We think that people that are going to get free from their addiction need both. After about 5 months, 6 months that they've shown that they can stay sober, we offer the opportunity for them to partner up with a life coach or a mentor, and that mentor helps them continue to grow and accelerate in other areas. So in their physical wellness, in their relationships, in their how do they steward and manage their finances, emotional well-being, so that we always say if they're not growing, they're going, or if they're not accelerating, they're decelerating. So if they can continue to see and experience growth, then we think that ultimately our vision and our goal is to see them become a mighty oak tree, and then start multiplying in the community. So if they become an oak deeply rooted, other people can pull themselves up from their branches and find freedom themselves. So our whole vision is to free these leaders that are hidden under addiction in order to eradicate substance abuse in our communities.
And you're wearing a T-shirt that describes exactly the things you have mentioned. There is an oak tree inside every acorn. Did I read that right?
That is correct.
And on the back of your shirt, freeing leaders hidden under addiction?
There's amazing people trapped in addiction, and I think a lot of times we just think that there are not, but once they get free from that substance, some of them are my very best friends, and I just see them do incredible things. In fact, one of the men that came to our house 5 years ago, he helps lead the mentorship program.
So you've seen some really wonderful success stories.
I have, and I've gotten a front row seat of just seeing miracles and lives transformed, and I think one of the men that has frequented this show, Aaron Landry, was the first mentor, and the first guy he mentored is about to graduate from UNC Chapel Hill.
Uh-huh. Very good. In talking with you, Billy, I can hear it in your voice and in the words that you use to describe what you're about and what the ministry is about. I'm reminded of that principle that everyone is made in the image of God. I can tell that that's the foundation of all that you're about.
That's absolutely the foundation. And when they come in the house, the one thing we tell everybody that's involved is that, God loved us, that while we're still sinners, he sent his son to die for us. So, if whether they're in sin or not, we love them, and we are no better than they are. We're all equal. We all have special gifts and talents, and we have a purpose in life. And our whole role is to love them where they are and help them find that purpose and live in their lane that God created them for.
If anyone listening knows of somebody who might be helped by your program or another like that, what would you suggest? Is there a place they can go for information?
There's a website. It's a pretty crude website because we don't really advertise much because it's a horrible business model. We pay for everything. So we provide them housing, transportation, food, shelter, everything. So, everybody that comes through is an expense from a dollar standpoint, but it's pilgrimsprogress.solutions, and there's a phone number there that they can contact.
Pilgrimsprogress.solutions?
Solutions, correct.
Uh-huh. Not .com or .org?
No, .com was taken. Pilgrim's Progress obviously is a well-known book.
Uh-huh.
So,
by John Bunyan?
By John Bunyan.
So pilgrimsprogress.solutions.
That's correct.
Got it.
That's correct.
Well, speaking of money, how is Pilgrim's Progress funded?
Well, I guess primarily our family.
Uh-huh.
So it gives me purpose with my real job of working with Merrill Lynch, and my son works with me. And
Putting money where your mouth is.
yeah, it's the most rewarding way that our money is spent. So it gives us more gratification and satisfaction than anything that we could buy.
We're about out of time, Billy. Tell us about this third song that you've selected, one that is, in fact, right off our playlist, Dust in the Wind by Kansas.
Well, so I said that this is more rewarding than anything money can buy, and one of the lyrics in the song says, all your money won't another minute buy. And I think of that a lot, is that, you know, we only have limited time on this earth, and we can't buy more time. We can make more money, but we can't buy more time. So I think a lot of how do we steward that time that we have here, and what do we do with it? And so we're just a moment in time, and we can impact this world, and so that when we're gone, the world's a better place, and other people are better for the short time that we were here. So, you know, all the things we build on this earth, I think one of the lyrics in the songs, it's just going to all come crumbling down. So no matter how nice my house is, or nice my cars are, or how much money I have in the bank account, I'm going to leave this earth with nothing except for the legacy that I've left behind. So that's, I guess, this song just kind of keeps me motivated. My time gets shorter every moment. So the time I've spent here, just got a little less time before I'm called home, and just want to make sure that I can have the greatest impact I can with that time that I have left.
Well, Billy, it's been a privilege and an inspiration to talk with you. Thank you.
It's been a privilege to be here, so thank you for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at the station, I commend you and Lisa and your son for what you've committed to and what you're doing.
They're the true, they are the workers that are behind the scene that don't get the attention, but without them, none of this would become a reality.
Well, thank you again.
Yes.
Let's hear it. Dust in the Wind by Kansas.
Acorn.